We're going to discuss the volume of rectangular prisms. Now, a rectangular prism means that you have a shape that looks like a kind of a long cube, and the bottom part is a rectangle, and it gets stretched upwards where it's three-dimensional. So we're going to talk about how do we find all the stuff inside. This is all of the inside parts. So imagine that you have a fish tank. How much water can you fit inside of this fish tank? That's kind of the goal, to figure out how much we can fill up on the inside. This is different than surface area. Surface area is on the outside. And the volume formula is going to be length times width times height. Now, if you know the commutative or associative property of multiplication, it doesn't really matter which one you do first. You could do height times width times length. You could do width times length times height. As long as you are multiplying the same numbers, you are going to get the correct answer. Length times width times height is how they have it broken up. And here we have three examples of types of problems you can expect to see in late elementary school and kind of early middle school problems. So the first one is one where you have units. Now with this units, you have these blocks, and each one of these blocks right here is going to represent a squared unit. So you're trying to figure out how many of these pink blocks are inside. So each block is going to equal 1 unit. So you got to figure out, okay, well, how many blocks are there? Because unfortunately, there's going to be some that you can't see, especially down like on the back side over here. So the way I tell you to do it, or I try to convince people to do it, is figure out how many blocks long is it. It's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 units long. Figure out how wide it is. Let's put I'll go ahead and write units. Figure out how wide it is across the bottom. It's 1, 2, 3. So it's 3 units wide. And then how tall is it? It is 2 units. It is 2 units tall. And to figure it out, you just multiply 5 times 3 times 2. 5 times 3 is 15. 15 times 2 is 30. And it's 30 units with a number 3 at the top. Now, how do you remember whether to put a 3 or a 2? The way I tell students is how many units did you multiply? I multiplied 1, 2, 3 units. So my exponent number is going to be a 3. So that's an example of a unit kind of problem. But what happens if they don't give you blocks? They just give you a shape, and you have to figure out the volume of that shape. Same as always, length times width times height. How long is it? How wide is it? And how tall is it? The reason they call them rectangular prisms is because, like I said, they are a rectangle at the bottom. So imagine you have this shape at the bottom, and they're trying to stretch it up. And that's also why they do the length times width first. They're trying to figure out, well, how much is all this? And then we're going to stretch it up. So to set it up correctly, or how they normally say it, it's going to be 12 feet long. It's going to be 3 feet wide. And it's going to be 5 feet tall. And here's where I multiply my number. So I'm really multiplying 12 times 3 times 5. I know that 12 times 3 is 36. Now I got to figure out what 36 times 5 is. 5 times 6 is 30. 5 times 3 is 15 plus 3 is 5 times 3 is 15 plus 3 is 18. So that means it is 180 feet. The question is how many feet? Well, I multiplied feet 1, 2, 3 times, so it is feet cubed. Now the last one we're going to do, so we had one with units, we had one with regular whole numbers. The last one is really where you get into some of the more difficult concepts. Not because anything's changing, it's still going to be length times width times height, but you're going to have some decimal numbers thrown in there. So we're going to try to find the bottom, length times width, because we've got to figure out this stuff first, which ironically enough, you're actually finding the area of that bottom shape, but that's something for another day. So you're going to do, it's 6.2 meters long. It is 2.3 meters wide, and it is 5.5 meters tall. So the first thing I'm going to have to do is going to take a little bit of thinking. First thing I'm going to have to do is multiply these first two numbers. Before you get any farther with that, let's actually, because a lot of students that still struggle with multiplying decimals, why don't you round it? 6.2 is close to 6, 2 is close to 2, and 5.5 is close to 6. 6 times 2 is 12, 12 times 6 is 72. So I'm hoping my answer is going to be close to 72 meters cubed. Like I said, if you're not that good at multiplying decimals, estimating and rounding is going to get you really close, or it usually will. So the first thing I'm going to do is 6.2 times 2.3. I'll do it over to the side. 6.2 times 2.3. Jump my decimals out of the way. It took me 2 jumps. 3 times 2 is 6. 3 times 6 is 18. Skip a line and put a 0. 2 times 2 is 4. 2 times 6 is 12. If I add up those numbers, 6 plus 0 is 6. 8 plus 4 is 12. Carry by 1. 1 plus 1 plus 2 is 14, or 4. And 1 plus nothing is 1. And I jump my decimal back 2 times. So we found out kind of what our area was at the bottom. And we found out that 6.2 times 2.3 is 14.26 meters squared, because we multiplied meters twice. Now we're at the last part. We got to figure out, well, if I multiply it by 5.5 meters to extend it up, how much space is going to be inside the whole object. So take that number. I'll do it in blue. 14.26 times 5.5. Before I multiply, I have to jump my decimals out of the way. Just going to take 1, 2 jumps right here, 1 jump right there. That's 3 jumps in all, because that's how many I'm going to have to jump it back. Zoom in a little bit. 6 times 5 is 30. 5 times 2 is 10, plus 3 is 13. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21. And 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. I can keep all those numbers, well, I'm going to skip a line and put a 0. And I can keep all those numbers at the top because I multiplied 5 with my first factor. I'm going to multiply 5 again. 5 times 6 is 30. I carried my 3. I'll do it a different color so you can kind of see it. 5 times 6 is 30. I carried my 3. 5 times 2 is 10. 0. Carry my 1. 5 times 4 is 20. 20 plus 1 is 21. Carry the 2. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 2 is 7. I need to add those numbers together, see what I get. I get 0, 3, 1, 8, 7, and I jump my decimal back 1, 2, 3 times. So I'm going to get my final answer. If I was to work it out, I would get my final answer of 78.130, and if I have 2 meters times 1 meter, that's meters cubed, which, if I look, that's pretty close to 72 meters cubed. It's not exactly, but it's only 6 off. And think about how much multiplying we had to do, so 6 is pretty darn close. And there we have our 3 great examples of how do you find the volume of rectangular prisms. Remember, you're multiplying length times width times height. If you don't remember the order, it doesn't matter as long as you're multiplying those 3 things together. Sometimes you're going to have to count the cubes, sometimes you're going to have to multiply whole numbers, and sometimes you have to multiply decimals.